TOA community and Fit Body Bootcamp community. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Robert Linkul, trainingtheolderadult.com. I want to talk to you today about an oldie but a goodie. This one is from my guy, Mike Zimmerman, AARP. Notice that date, April 2021. This is a year into the pandemic. Mike interviewed a personal trainer, bald guy, beard, a little overweight, interviewed me for what could people be doing at home? It's been a year. What could they do to improve their health and fitness? What should they focus on? What should their concerns be, etc.? So we got on the phone. We started to talk. I wanted to kind of go over and discuss some of the things that I suggest in there that Mike put in there. And then there are a couple of things we want to update, a couple of things that should have been. I could have done a little bit more efficiently. Let's start there. All right. So first part, Mike starts to talk about the pandemic basically stopped everybody in their tracks, and for like 12 plus months, the majority of people went into like a full lockdown and didn't really go anywhere or do a whole lot. A lot of people just sat. So let's talk about that really quickly. There's a fairly recent study done earlier this year. I will do my best to remember to put the link in the description, where like 40, 50 plus year old individuals, I think the average age was like 52 or 53. It was fairly young as far as older adults go. 50 of them or 40 of them, something like that. None of them had any diseases, any limitations, any injuries at all. They were all healthy. Like no medications, just normal, everyday, good, healthy people, okay? And they made them sit down for 7 days. Just 7 days of a simulated catastrophic injury, like you blew your back apart or you broke both of your legs or something, where all you could do was like go to the bathroom, come back, go to the kitchen, come back. You had to just simulate bed rest for the most part. They couldn't go for walks, couldn't do any exercise, couldn't even just get up and get like 3,500 steps in a day, nothing. In 7 days, they lost 1.4 kilos of lean muscle mass. That's 3 pounds, basically, okay? 3 pounds of muscle mass lost from 7 days of just sitting and doing nothing. Now, granted, that's like literally doing nothing other than just sitting there. So during the pandemic, is that what people did? I mean, I would like to think people were still taking walks and still, getting up and about and like doing something. But I think for the most part, a lot of people just sat around. I think a lot of people sat and watched the news and worried and just, you couldn't, even go to the grocery store. It was a stressful thing. So for a while, I mean, at least for 2 months, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, but then 2 months and then 6 months and et cetera. Like a lot of people just sat around. So if in 7 days you can lose 3 pounds of muscle mass, what happened in 2 weeks, in 2 months, in 6 months, in a year? Pretty catastrophic. I mean, a drastic amount of loss of strength, which is also in function. So we use that term sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass and function, but specifically the strength is called dynapenia, okay? Dynapenia is specifically the loss of pure muscular strength, like how strong, how heavy can I lift, and then you have potentiopenia, which is power production. How fast can I move that weight, or how fast can I move my body through space as we're lifting or as we're just doing anything, okay? Both of those are subcategories of sarcopenia. So if we lost 3 pounds of muscle mass, dynapenia, loss of strength occurred. Potentiopenia, loss of power definitely occurred because we lost the muscle that's actually designed. Now, did you actually lose the muscle? No, the fibers just shrunk basically because you're not using them. You build those fibers, you have them pretty much forever. Unless you are, completely bedridden for decades, then you can, I think, technically lose fibers, but usually they just shrink down basically, okay? All right, continuing on there, here's a quote. We see a 3 to 8% loss of muscle mass every decade starting at 30. But after age 60, it can go up to as much as 10%. That's all accurate. And that shows specifically if you are like super, super sedentary after age 60, 10% per decade. So let's say you've already lost 20 or 30%, and then it's 40%, 50%, like half your muscle mass is gone by the time you're 70 or 80. Bad news, man. Like you really need, okay, and we'll kind of get into this, like at least twice a week resistance training. I'm going to say, and I say this almost every presentation I give at such, if you just basic resistance training twice a week, maybe 3 days a week, 20, 25 minutes, would fix 80% of limitations, injuries, um, you know, regularly aggravating limitations. My shoulder hurts, my back's tight, my hamstrings this, my lower back that, like those kinds of nagging chronic injuries that we're just like, I'm old and this is just what happens. If you just get it stronger, 80% of the time, it would fix itself. Okay. The other 20, you've got a real damage. And that, again, there's no research to support that. I'm just suggesting to you, well, there's tons of research to actually support the idea that the more muscle mass we have as we age, the less injury we're going to have. But I'm just kind of generalizing, okay, giving you a guesstimation. Grip strength, okay, we talk about grip strength in this one. Significant loss can occur from 30 to 50, and then again from 50 up basically every decade. There's a CDC chart that shows grip strength scores for every 5 years, I think it is, male, female, as we age, et cetera, where you should be, quote unquote. But grip strength is such a vital component to this, and it's not specific to just like, well, if I just sit here and work on my grippers and all this, I'll have great grip strength, then Rob says I'll be in shape. Because you do so much in the garden, in the workshop, in the yard, in the weight room, and you use your hands and grip and coordinate and do so much movement, because of all that, you have a good grip strength. So it's a way for us to like snapshot if you're fit or not, because your grip strength is good. Now this is great for opening and closing windows and doors and jars and everything else that is, manual grip strength manipulation. As we get older, if you have arthritis, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, carpal tunnel syndrome, neuropathy, like any of these things that can occur to the aging body, these all become issues in how you use your hands and what you do with them. So use it or lose it. We need to continue to use these, but if you abuse them, you can accelerate a lot of those issues, especially arthritis, etc. So there's always a happy medium for everything. And we want to have good grip strength, but we also want that to be a result of an active lifestyle, not necessarily while I'm watching Jeopardy, I'm doing my grippers. And so, yeah, I've got this amazing grip strength. I can crush apples with my hands, yet I can't do, more than 14 sit-to-stands in 30 seconds, or I can't do my timed up and go in less than 13 seconds, or I can't get up and down off the floor. I can't reach my arms overhead. Okay, so don't let the comment of grip strength is a key assessment tool just have you focus on getting your grip strength better. It's overall life, activity, performance, etc. that will dictate a good grip strength. So grip strength, very important, okay, good thing, but again, lifestyle emphasis. During the pandemic, did people get out and go on walks and do? Yes, but most did not. So we have two areas of concern. Shoulders, hips, our two ball and socket joints. First one is the shoulders. Can we reach to the overhead position? Hips, can we get up and down from the floor, let alone get up and down from a seated position, okay? So the first one we went through was, can you just reach your arms to 180 degrees overhead? And if you can, then you're good. There's no pain. You're okay to overhead press and pretty much do any upper body lifts for the most part. That's a pretty general assessment. But if you go to reach overhead and one arm makes it and the other one's 20 degrees short, or it has an impingement, or it hurts, you watch someone's face and they go, and they get through this range, and when they're coming back, you see them like kind of seize through it. Well, there's a catch. There's something structurally damaged. Now, do I want to put weights in your hands and have you start pressing overhead? No, we're going to make things worse. So that's the first one. Now, what I'll tell you is, if you're over 50 and you haven't resistance trained ever, and you haven't had a reason to put your arms over your head, the likelihood of you being able to reach to 180 degrees overhead and back down is pretty low, actually, because you just haven't done it. Like the reason you still walk well is because you walk all the time. The reason you probably still squat okay is because you squat all the time. The reason you can pull things towards you is because you pull things towards you all the time. But we don't really press to 180 degrees over our head ever. I mean, even if you're putting away, your bag into the overhead compartment. I mean, that's just over your head and it's out in front of you. Like, when are the demands to reach at 180 degrees over your head? Really, the only purpose for that is for training. When we press a weight over our head, we're trying to get the biggest, fullest range of motion. If you're a swimmer, you're diving into the water, you'd reach 180 degrees overhead. If you're vertical jump testing, you're going to reach 180 degrees overhead. If you're a gymnast and you walk on your hands, I mean, I can't really think of any other examples, but just regular everyday people, like, what are they putting their arms 180 degrees over their head for? They're reaching up to try to get something off the ceiling. I mean, very rare occasions are my point. So when that moment arises and we're like, we need to reach overhead, I've got to get, the Christmas lights off the gutters or whatever, right? If we don't train for that, they won't be able to do it. And in many cases, if you spend a whole day trying to get the Christmas lights up or down, then your shoulders are probably going to be trashed because you're like, well, I'm not strong in this position. I don't do it. I never do it. Now I just spent 10 hours doing it. Massive overuse and abuse. So swelling, pain, injury occurs. So let's train for it with the idea of get my delts as strong as I can, work a big full range of motion as best I can, and at the same time won't have, ideally the issues. When I need to use it, I'll be ready. Same with the sit to stand. How do we properly pick things up off the ground? How do we properly get up and down out of chairs? When we say proper, I mean not abusing your body when you do it, doing it with some decent technique and function. So ideally, you would step to a straddled position over whatever it is you're going to pick up. Hinge your hips back, squat down, bending the knees, bend at the waist. Okay, keeping your torso in a straight position, not vertical, but straight position. Lowering down, grabbing the implement, coming back up. Now, if it's a toolbox, you could do that. If it's a container of laundry detergent, you could do that. That might sit, 10 to 18 inches off the floor. What if it's a piece of paper? What if it's your wallet? What if it's a tack that you just dropped on the ground? Well, to get to that now, I'm going to hinge squat, and then I'm nowhere close to getting, so I'm just going to have to round my back over to try to get down to get that. Ideally, you would go down to a knee and then put a hand down on the floor and then grab whatever it is that you're trying to get. And now you just did a get up, like a half windmill type variation of a get up. So that's where we'd want to practice anything where we split our feet, and then anything where we go down to the floor and eventually to the floor and then get back up again. These are daily life demands, maybe not on a regular basis for everybody, but in a position to where, ideally, if you had to get up and down off the floor, playing with the kids, dog, grandkids, you drop something, you got to get down, you got to get back up. Or if you slip and fall, you don't hurt yourself, you just end up on the ground. Well, we got to get up. So what kind of ability do I have to do that? Let's take a look, that kind of thing. So proper mechanics, very important, taking care of your body, encouraging yourself not to bend or round over at the back, but to properly hinge mechanic at the hip. That's why we use that term, okay? All right, so we talked about getting things up and down the floor. The other test here is the timed up and go, tug. Now, here's my first correction where I blew it on this one. 10 feet, you stand up, walk around a cone, come back, sit down. I said at the very bottom, 20 seconds or less is when you want to, that's completely wrong. It's 13 seconds or less. 13.5 to be completely correct. Make sure that we're quoting this proper from the CDC and the tug test. You want to be able to do this in 13.5 seconds or less is ideal. 3 meters or 9.9 feet, 10 feet away. Your goal is to do, they put on here 12 seconds or less. The official research shows 13.5 is kind of our goal of what we want people to be able to do. Now, less is better, right? 6 to 8 seconds is ideal. Like, that's the best. That means you can just kick ass, get around this thing, get back. You're not a fall risk at all, but 13 seconds less, we're in the clear, I guess I would say. But if it's 13 seconds or more, we're a fall risk. And if you're over 20 seconds, you're a major fall risk. So that was what I remembered when we were kind of talking about this, was the 13-second marker I forgot about. The 20-second marker I knew. If you're over 20, like 20 to 30, massive fall risk. So I think that's where my brain kind of recalled that, but just for the record, wanted to make sure everybody remembered that one. Okay, the tug, the timed up and go, is a super simple test to do. You just need 10 feet of space and a chair. You're ready to roll. Stopwatch, okay? So you time them, give them 1 or 2 attempts, good to go. You can also do your 30-second sit-to-stand test there, and that's another CDC heavy research one. And your scores, I'm looking at my score sheet here. I got all my little cheat sheets up here. The scores for men, bare minimum, if you're in your 90s, 7. For ladies, 4. And for fellas in your 60s, 14, ladies, 12. So anywhere in between 7 and 14 as we age those last 40 years of life, 60 to 90 plus, 30 plus years of life. And same for the ladies, 4 to 12. Obviously, you want to be able to do as many of these as we can and keep a functionality of high muscle turnover, but a big full range of motion too, and you're squatting two parallel. I often get asked too, why are the women's scores lower than the men's? I don't know, other than the fact that men carry more muscle mass longer in life, so I think they're able to perform these muscular tests probably better or higher scoring than females. But in many cases, the trained individuals, the women outperform the men quite often. I would say the majority of my, if not all my female clients, would outperform their male counterparts, their husbands, in the majority of the tests that we do. Okay, other additional goals that we discussed, other than testing your overhead range of motion, testing your hip functionality, sit to stand, or your timed up and go. 7,500 steps a day. That's a good one. At bare minimum, 3,000. Bare minimum, 3,000. 5,000 is better. 7,500 is even better than that. 10,000 is great. Okay? Get a pedometer, $15, hook it on your hip. Second you stand up out of bed, slide that thing on your hip, off you go. Go brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, get your coffee, yada, yada. Start your day. The whole day goes, you sit down, you take off your slippers, you're ready to lay down, watch Matlock, call it a night. Ready to watch Judge Judy, recorded Judge Judy, whatever it is, right? I'm just being a dick. Take off that pedometer, take note, cool. Let's add that into, if you're tracking on an app or if you just have a notebook by your bed, write down the date, how many steps you took. You do that every day for a week, it'll give us a good average of how many steps you're getting, throughout the week. And again, ideally 7,500 a day from wake to sleep is ideal. That would give you almost 4 miles, 3.75 miles per day for the average pace. Resistance training twice a week. 3 days would be better, twice a week minimum. Remember this, hey, we got balloons. We have 168 hours out of this week. And if I ask you for 2 20-minute sessions, let's give you 10 minutes to warm up. So let's call it 2 30-minute sessions. There's an hour out of your life. So when people tell me, I don't have time or yada, yada, you have 168 of these. I need one. Can you commit one of these? I don't need to, I have got all these other people I have to take care of. It's selfish of me to go into, that is less than 1%. It's less than 0.5% of your time for you to be selfish and take care of yourself by getting a little bit of strength. Bare minimum. That's not selfish. That's extremely responsible of you. Actually, I would make the argument it's selfish of you not to do this. It's selfish of you not to take care of yourself because as you're aging, all the research suggests you're going to fall apart and not be able to take care of anybody if you don't keep yourself strong. So if that's the priority, if that's your, I got to be here for my kids, I got to be here for my parents, I got to be here for my husband and my wife, I've got to be here to take care of these people around me, and I can't commit any time in my day to go do anything for myself because it's all about them, then after 55, when your back starts hurting, your knees all jacked up, and 60 comes around and you can't really do a whole lot now what? What do we got now? And I'm being generous with 55 to 60. Most people now, most untrained individuals who've had a sedentary lifestyle their entire life start feeling negative ramifications in their late 20s, early 30s, especially if you're female, because you're already at a disadvantage. You don't have the testosterone that we have, and pure muscle mass or body size, we fellas are typically bigger bodied than you ladies. So you're starting with a smaller mass of manipulable bone density, muscle mass, etc. You have just less Play-Doh than we do. We get a 10-pound clump, you get a 5-pound clump. Let's mold it into whatever we're going to be here. Well, no matter what, I'm going to be 250 pounds and you're going to be 125 pounds. And I'm going to, that's for the majority. I'm talking averages here, okay? There's always your outliers on either end. But on the bell curve, on average, guys are going to be bigger than ladies. And we've got a buttload more testosterone than you do. I mean, I'm talking 200,000 times more. Like the average men's score for testosterone is to be between 250 and 1,000, whatever it is, whatever the testosterone score is, it's between 250 and 1,000. If you're somewhere in between there, your testosterone levels are good, quote unquote. Women, it's between 5 and 25 or something like that. I mean, it's a really low score. You have a drop in the bucket of testosterone that we have. So, and these are, again, normal functioning, healthy bodies, okay? Again, I'm talking on averages. So the potential for you to grow muscle, okay, well, maintain muscle and bone density, let alone grow muscle as you age. If there was any advice I could give to anybody coming out of high school, getting into college, and they're like, what should I do with my career and where should I go with my life and where should I? My answer would be to the weight room. Start lifting weights twice a week for 25 minutes and get some calcium. Start taking a little bit of creatine every day and 1 gram a day. Great for the ladies, okay? 3 to 5 grams for you fellas out there. Like, make sure your protein intakes every day are good, that you're getting 8 hours of sleep, that you are hydrating yourself on a regular basis. That's the kind of advice I would give, because those are healthy practices in your youth that are going to help you overbuild a healthy body, that as we start to age, and you keep training, mind you keep training, but as we age and that starts to kind of deteriorate, you're miles ahead of everybody else on average your age in bone density, muscularity, and health, just overall high quality of health. And your reduced mortality rate is anywhere between 250 and 400% less, right? You are much, much less likely to die if you have strong bones, more muscle mass, and better cardiovascular health, all of which are addressed by resistance training. Now, is that the only thing you need to do? No. But if there's one thing that I would suggest to every human being on earth, and we have yet to find a disease or a disability that resistance training makes it worse, okay? Other than, like, I have 5 ruptured discs in my back. Should I do deadlifts? Probably not. That's not what I'm saying. I always get people to take everything to an extreme. My point is we've yet to find something where if I made your body stronger, it would be worse for you, okay? Maybe the rarest of rare autoimmune disease, where a stimulus like that might encourage the autoimmune disease to attack itself. I think that's, what's it called? Is it Lou Gehrig's disease? I think it's a version of that, now that I think of it. I think there's one, okay? Don't quote me on the name. I think that's it. I'm not certain. Other than that, you're good. Lift weights. Anybody, everybody. Male, female, anything in between, any race, any gender, all of it. Everybody benefits from being more muscular. That doesn't mean too muscular that you don't fit in your jeans and your blah, blah, blah. By muscular, I mean, where's the average? Be a step above that on where your age, height, bracket is. Just be a little bit more muscular. If you can do a lot more, I would suggest that, okay? And again, been training my entire life to be too muscular, have not achieved it yet. The majority of people can't naturally. You can't naturally kind of get to a point where you're like, me so muscular, me can't move. You know, like it just doesn't happen. We just don't have the makeup to get that bodybuilder figure without massive assistance or the perfect diet and amazing training programs and work ethic, which you can't do in 2.5 hours a week, is my point, okay? You are not going to get, you could lift for an hour every day, 7 days a week, and you're not going to get too muscular, okay? All right, that was a long rant. 3 sets of 5 to 10 repetitions. This can be updated, okay? 5 to 30 repetitions, anywhere in between there. As long as the load you were selecting is challenging to you in the moment, then we will have a hypertrophy-based response. That means you'll grow some muscle mass. If you do 5 reps or up to 30 reps and you get done and you're like, I could do 20 more, the load is not appropriate, meaning it's not heavy enough to create a change or a stimulus or a growth. So you would need to select a load that when you get done, you're like, whew, I could do maybe 2 to 4 more, maybe. But anything more than that, go heavier, okay? Go heavier. If you can set it down a weight and you're like, I could do 4 or 5 more, okay? Let's just stick with 2 to 4, but somewhere in there. You're like, I could do 2 to 5 more, somewhere in there. You're strong enough to be able to go one level up and not get hurt, okay, for sure. If you're like, I could have done one or two more, then I would say you're probably not ready for that next jump, because one set you might be more fatigued or you just get out of position, then the risk of injury is there. But if you get done, 2, 3, 4 sets in a row, and every time you're like, I could do at least 4 more, I could do at least 4 more, then go up and wait. Okay, you're going to be good. It's only going to benefit you. All right, some of the suggested lifts. Now, again, mind you, we were talking to people who were at home who didn't have much to work with. He really wanted this to be like they're going to use, a container of water and some soup cans and kind of old school, like we're at home workouts. But I was trying to encourage, like, just go buy a couple of weights, okay? You just get a couple of weights. Like, let's encourage people to have a weight room. Anyhow, so you'll see a lot of comments about a bucket of water and blah, blah, blah. Hands either at your side or across your shoulders here as you hinge forward. Don't bend. He uses that word bend. I know, I don't like using the word bend. I want you to hinge properly at the hip, but make sure you don't bend your back. That's the whole idea of this. Good mornings are fine. They're a great hamstring stretch. Okay. Do you want to load them? Only if you know how to hinge properly. But then yes, you can. A dumbbell row. One hand on a bench, other arm row, posterior chain. Excellent focus on this. It's very simple to do and works really well. It gives you a great return. Overhead press, again, indicating that we can reach overhead. Nothing wrong with doing one arm and then the other, doing one arm and then the other, switching between arms. You don't have to do both at the same time. I prefer to train one arm at a time when I'm overhead pressing, because I have some injuries. I have some things I want to focus on. I want my technique to be really good. And when we do both arms, I have to pay attention to two things, balance two things, etc., where manipulating one implement versus two is always going to be easier, okay? Lunges, or anything where you split your feet, as he suggests on here, like step ups, okay, split squats, etc. But lunges are great. If you can take a walking lunge, okay, progressive, awesome. 90 degrees or as close to the floor with your back knee as you can without hitting it to the floor. Some coaches will suggest to touch it to the ground. I'm not a huge fan of that. You are maybe older, you are maybe osteoporosis based, or you have osteopenia. The last thing we want to do is bang your kneecap on the ground over and over again and hope that your patella snaps or breaks in half or shatters and spider breaks. And now we've got this long, excruciating surgery to go through and a massive rehab. Just stop an inch from the floor, you'll be good. That last inch isn't make or break. Now, eventually, we are going to go to the ground to get to the floor to do a get up and all that. But when training lunges, just get as close as you can. And then farmer carry. Carry a weight in each hand. Okay, muscular engagement, strong arms, or one in one hand, nothing in the other. Somebody made a comment on the page. They said, I was a milk delivery person for 30 years, and I can't suggest this is a bad idea enough, that carrying weight is really damaging on your body and it stretches your arms out and something else like that. There is zero research to suggest that. In most cases, when people get hurt carrying things, they're not strong enough to carry it, and or their technique fails as they carry. Carrying a load for 20 paces, setting it down, turning it back and bringing it back is not going to make your body blow apart and your shoulders rip out of socket. And that's not the case. As a milk delivery person, how many hours a day did you spend carrying milk back and forth? And you said you did that for 30 years. So is it the fact that you just carried heavy things for 30 years, 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, that maybe was damaging to your body? Or was it simply the fact that you carried weight back and forth? Because if that was the case, everyone that carries their groceries is fucked. Like everything's gonna blow apart. Like, don't carry your own suitcase into the airport. Hire somebody else to. Like, what are we talking about? There's nothing wrong with carrying load. But I would suggest any movement that you do for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 30 years is probably going to cause some asymmetries or some imbalances or some injury issues, because you did it a ton. You did it to a point of abusing your body. So yeah, if you, milk delivery person, say, oh, that damaged my body a bit. Well, of course, I'm asking people to do this 20 paces 6 times in their workout. They're going to be fine. They're only going to benefit from this. And I bet you don't have bone density issues. I bet you don't have osteoporosis. And I would guess you don't have sarcopenia either, unless you just completely sat down and did nothing after you retired. Your body was probably so far ahead per your age group and demographic in both of those categories. I bet your grip strength was outstanding. There were a lot of good benefits from that. But if my job were to grab something and place it in an overhead compartment for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 30 years, I'd have shoulder issues. If my job was to run up a hill, I don't pick a movement, anything that I had to do for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 30 years, I'm going to have injuries because of it. So statements like that, when you go, that sounds like a bad idea to me, you're telling people something that's going to get them hurt. I completely disagree with that. Could not disagree with you more, and have buckets full of research that support that loaded carries are extremely healthy and good for your body. But anything done to excess will typically cause negative returns. Farmer carries, good. All right, wrapping this up, start very small. Mike did a really good job of showing this high intensity stationary bike and stationary exercises. I think it was a recent study, small study of participants interrupt a normal sedentary 8-hour period with 4-second bursts of high intensity stationary cycling 5 times an hour over a workday. So they get on a bike at different sporadic points throughout their day of an 8-hour workday. They do 4-second bursts on this bike, 2 minutes and 40 seconds of total exercise throughout the day, and found that their fat oxidation benefits lasted into the following day. This is an extreme example to show some research. As little as 10 minutes a day of exercise has benefits. Pretty cool. So over 8 hours at different parts throughout the day, they would hop on a bike, do these little 4-second sprints, get a little spike in their heart rate, and that burning sensation of fat. Oh, I won't get into all of that of how that occurs, but the stimulus has now been ignited in the body to go, let's start burning some body fat. That happens, and then you're done. All of a sudden, you're done. So just this little speak, and then little spike, and then we go back to work, and then another little spike, and then back to work. And over 8 hours, they would do these little spikes. Grand total of 2 minutes and 40 seconds every day when you add together all the intervals. That had a benefit that lasted metabolistically to the next day with as little as that. So if you just did, a 20-minute walk every day for sure, and then lifted weights for 20 minutes every other day or 2 days a week at minimum, think of all the great health benefits that will come from this. But really, there aren't a whole lot of negative returns that come from this. Mind you, your injury risk to do any kind of exercise is 4%. 4%. There's a 4% chance you're going to get hurt doing any exercise. And then there are different extremes of different styles of training that will either take that up to like 14 or 15% or as low as 2%. But either way, there's always going to be a risk of injury because you're moving. I could get up from this chair and fall over and hurt my ankle or my foot, and that's a risk I take, right? So to say, well, I'm going to get hurt if I start resistance training, quite the opposite. More than likely, you're going to get a lot stronger, a lot healthier, live longer, feel better, perform better, look better, sleep better, etc. across the board. And then instead of, as the average American dies between 71 and 74, maybe you live to 79 to 83, simply because you added 2 days of resistance training. Really small bouts of exercise can go a long way. And last little bit here, always select proper technique over achieving your reps. That means if you're going to do 15 reps with this weight, that's your goal, and you get to 12 and your posture's starting to fail and you're like, I just can't do this properly, stop. Getting those last 3 reps with poor technique, the risk of injury goes way up and the risk for return goes way down. As far as like, I'm going to get better with these last 3 reps, all you're doing is increasing your risk of opportunity to get injured. Those last 3 reps, the benefit return is not as good as you would think. So Mike Israetel talks about this often, like you don't really need to train to max. That's what a lot of bodybuilders thought back in the day, that you had to train every single set to the point where you're like, I can't do another rep, and then set the weight down. You can always have a 2 to 4 rep in reserve range when you lift and still have fantastic hypertrophy gains, cardiovascular gains, etc., however your style of training is. That basically means you're using somewhere between 80, 70, and 90% of your 1 rep max, but just rarely do you need to go to 100%. And with the aging body over age 45, 50, I would say probably never, unless you're attempting to perform the sport of powerlifting or Olympic lifting where 1 rep maxes are the sport. Outside of that, I don't see huge benefits for it at all. Just find load that you can lift, and when you get done, you go, well, I could have probably done 2 more or up to 4. If you're like, I could do more than 4, go heavier. Okay, go heavier and just learn to lift weights that challenge you. Your body's capable of doing it. So as long as you're doing the reps we asked, and you can do the technique that we discussed, and on top of that, you could do the tempo. That's a whole nother thing. 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down, or whatever we pick. Then you've reduced your risk all the way down to 2.2% that you're going to get hurt, because you're just following really good, strong criteria for lifting well. All right, gang. Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this one. There's 35 minutes of your life that hopefully you got something good out of that. Again, it's 3 years ago this article popped out, but it's a good one. I think it was worth discussing. I wanted to kind of update a couple of things, and I hope you got some good takeaways. So as always, Mike Zimmerman, great job, my man. Worked with you now on a couple of articles. Really appreciate you, and got a couple of new articles coming out here soon. Been doing a few interviews here with Silver Sneakers and with AARP, and so as those come about, I'll make sure we get those out to everybody, especially if you've joined our newsletter and or subscribed to the channel here. We'll make sure you all get that stuff sent out. Links are in the description. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, make sure you don't miss any of the content that we put out. We appreciate you all. Thank you for helping us grow the community, grow the channel. If you have any questions, head over to trainingtheolderadult.com. And until next time, continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.